So thank you for joining me on Filme Shilmy.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
Yes, and I think the money is also very happy to be here as well. I
I
thought,
saw I
hi,
saw the money behind and I thought, what? Why did these notes? And then I realized, it's in theme of what we're going to discuss
Patel,
on the
really?
show.
Yes, exactly. I mean, look, I mean, Parle, I mean, this is so special because you obviously had acting stints before, but here you're actually headlining the show. I mean, a
Mhm.
huge responsibility, but also a wonderful opportunity. How would you sort of express this opportunity per se?
So it's been a huge sort of learning curve for me. I come from like the world of sketch and skit comedy, which is very different to following a scripted script word for word.
Hmm.
And it's very different in terms of how I approach the stage and how I act on the stage. So it's not my first major role on the stage. Um, I've done some other stuff, but this has to be like a first when it comes to like learning a dialogue. When it comes to learning a dialogue and bringing out a character in an entirely scripted way. All the
Right.
other stuff that I've done before has relied very much on me to look at the script and then reinvent it or be very playful with it. Whereas in this role um, of Jayesh Pai Patel,
Hmm.
it's very different in the sense that it's very scripted. So the opportunity's been amazing. It's been a huge learning curve. I've been lucky to be surrounded by other really, really talented artists who have sort of advised me and given me pointers and taught me lots, but also have let me do things in a way that I'm comfortable with and in a way I'm still adding my own particular style to things as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know what, like this show itself, it really does uh reinforce the idea that materialistic things like money are very momentary. You know, it's all about the humanity and re trying to rekindle spirituality, whichever way that is. I think that is
Mhm.
the sort of important way of life. But I think over the years, Pale, how do you feel that has really inculcated into you as a person and your beliefs too?
I feel like that's the reason why I said yes to the show because I've done lots of pure comedy where it's beginning to end like there's no real message in the show. The message is laugh. That is the fun. And that's always fun to do because I do believe that laughter is the best medicine. And I do think that that's a part of my personal brand. But when I got offered this role, um, it became really evident to me that there's something much deeper in this show. There's a nice social message here that anyone from any community, any religion, any background, right, can relate to, and that is the idea that money isn't the most important thing in this world. Um, all whilst being really funny. So like there's this strong social message, there's a strong spiritual message as well. I won't give too much away about that. Um, but at the same time, it's I would say 75% through the lens of comedy. It is a comedy show, but it's a
Mhm.
comedy show where you take home a special message. Um, and even from the feedback we've had from the audience so far, everyone's been like, "Oh my God, really funny, but really special message as well." So yeah.
Right. And I think this year particularly marks very specially for you as well, because I think it's what, 10 years since you began as a YouTuber, and now you're obviously headlining a theatre production, which is obviously touring all over the UK. Uh,
Mhm.
when you look back at the Parle that began his YouTube journey, what would you say were your thoughts then? And what do you think has really changed or transpired for you in terms of discovering this craft you have?
I think for me, I'm I'm sort of amazed at how vast the industry is. So like when I started doing YouTube, I thought, okay, I can work on YouTube. Maybe I'll get to work on TV and radio and theater. But then it's only when I started getting the opportunities to do that, like working on radio, working on television, or like now theater, that I realized that even within theater, there's so many roles and things that you can do. So, you can do stage management, you can do writing, you can do directing, you can do tech, you can do marketing. There's so much work within the industry. So it's made me realize that one, there's lots to learn, and two, there's lots of amazing opportunities to build teams and work together with other people that are passionate about the same things as you. So like for me, um it's been sort of like taking the lid off a jar, taking the tackle off a double and
Yeah,
going, oh, like there's so
like a
much.
Pandora's box.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much to this. Um, and so that fear of what will I do next isn't there because it's like there's so much more to do. Like I feel like, oh my God, it's been 10 years and it still feels like I've not even started. So
Mhm.
like that whole energy to keep going, to learn more, to do more has definitely come to life.
Right. And honestly, Pale, I think you, Preeti, and there are so many other figures as well who have been really instrumental in bringing Gujarati narratives to the forefront to audiences. And I feel like, we didn't have that whole idea of a figure who's Gujarati that's popular amongst the youth that we can relate to. So I think for you, I mean, of course, I'm sure you never really set out to be an icon of any sorts. No one ever thinks that, oh, आज मैं icon बनूंगा और फिर मैं icon बन गया.
Yeah.
It's never like that, right? But I think
Um,
when you were setting out to sort of do that, uh, why did you feel that there was a huge lack of Gujarati representation in the mainstream front of things, and even now, perhaps to an extent too?
yeah. Yeah, so I think I went to a university in West London, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. Of course, made lots and lots of different friends from different corners of like the Indian subcontinent, that South Asian sort of land, you could say. And For me, like I always noticed that Gujaratis tend to not really know much about their culture, and then there wasn't really very many avenues to look at to learn about culture. Um, Whereas other communities like the Punjabi community, the Tamil community, um, the Bengali community as well, there was a lot more going on, and there's more than one reason for that, right? Like that's a whole separate topic, but for me, it was sort of like, well, surely there has to be more to us than like one Bollywood song every 10 years being released with that Gujarati flavor. Um, and so I studied broadcast media. I learned about filmmaking. I learned about television and content and things, digital content and things like that. And that was sort of all done so I could, learn how to YouTube and things like that. And really, there's no way you learn how to do that. But for me, I wanted to be prepared as I could be. So I started exploring Gujarati culture more so because nobody else was doing it, and I felt like, well, someone has to do this. And it came from just like a very simple conversation with my mum, where I was like, Mum, like nobody's doing like anything for Gujarati people. I'm like, why are we so boring? Like, there's nothing happening. And then she was like, well, what are you doing? And I was like, well, not much. And then she was like, well, why don't you start? And my mum actually comes from like a really big backdrop of folk dance, and she used to take part in
Wow.
school shows and things like that. So
Mhm.
like she had that passion and zest for like the stage and the arts and things like that as well. And my dad's always been that uncle, that kaka that used to film and photograph all the weddings. So realistically, like all of this comes from my parents. Um, and yeah, so I started exploring, and then at the same time, India's digital revolution happened where more and more people started getting access to the internet. OTT started taking off, um, and more filmmakers in India started exploring regional content as well, right? It wasn't just me. Like I can definitely see that I've contributed, especially from the West, because I feel like we've got a long way to go here in the West.
Yeah.
But it started happening in India. We started seeing more Gujarati films, more Gujarati songs. Um, a scene, is beginning to brew. Like And
Hmm.
now you have like people like Madhuri headlining in a Gujarati themed film. There was Majhama, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then before that, you had Gangubai. You had Alia Bhatt in Gangubai, right?
Hmm.
SLB always has been a flag bearer. So like, it became a thing where now being Gujarati isn't not part of the mainstream. Rather than having one song a decade, we have 5 songs every year, 10 songs every year, plus all the Gujarati independent releases that are being released as well.
Hmm.
So it's been like a coming of age for the entire industry, and it's just getting bigger, whether it's comedy, whether it's music, whether it's dance, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. And I think, one thing that I must say is that I love the way you do the characters. I mean, if you could do give us a slight example of Jitu
Which
and
character would you like to see?
uh, any one of them, really. I mean,
Any
I think
character?
Kokila has to be there. I mean,
Yeah, I think so. Kokila Ben is my number one flagship. Whichever show I have done, she has been a part of it, right?
yeah.
So what could I tell you about Kokila Ben? Oh my God. ગઈકાલે મને તો છે ને બકિંગહામ પેલેસ બોલાવી હતી. આ ચાર્લ્સ નું બધું ચાલતું હતું ને તો કમિલાને ના આવડે બધું આપણું બનાવતા. તો હું ગઈ અને મેં ઢોકળા બનાવી દીધા બધા માટે. જલ્દી પતે ને કામ. હા, બેસ્ટ. So Kokila auntie is, yeah, the quintessential Gujarati auntie that everyone knows. Even if she's not related to you, everybody knows a Kokila auntie. Um, and yeah, my character comedy is a big part of who I am, and I'll always be doing that, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, or on the stage or whatever. So yeah,
That's beautiful. No, very wonderfully done there. And I think, one thing that I'm very curious to know, Pale, is that, when you are playing characters which become so popular, I mean, I often have this conversation with actors where we talk about them switching on and off from the roles they play. But I think it'll be really great to know from a comedic aspect. Uh, when you play a character like Kokila, that is obviously a quintessential Gujarati auntie that we've all met at some point in our lives, but also very larger than life. Do you ever find yourself, uh, having influences of her in your actual life as well, or perhaps the way she behaves, the mannerisms? Do you find it sometimes hard to
yeah,
disassociate yourself from that?
yeah. Sometimes I do because it's the character is such a big part of you, and you play it so much. A big part of your psychology in your head is that character. So, this is one thing that a lot of people always sort of struggle to understand is that how do you become the character and you just do it so well? You could literally just Jarvis Skull like 24 hours, be, you know,
Right.
uh, be this character if you had to. And I'm like, yeah, because it's a self-written character, you know what they are like inside out because it's something you yourself have written, right? You hold the key to that character. So then in your day to day, you can hear the voice of that character in your head
Right.
saying that, oh, like, don't do this and don't do that, or um, are you feeling like this? It becomes like a voice in your head, not in a negative way, but in that sort of fun, silly way. And when I'm with my friends, they always know.
Hmm.
They always know that Kokila Auntie's never too far away. She's always like up my sleeve. It's like a party trick. Um, and yeah, like it does become a good part of you. And in a fun way, like in a positive way for sure.
But I think the flip side of that as well might be really fascinating to explore as well, because obviously when you do become very popular and you become well known for performing a certain kind of character, do you kind of feel sometimes it gets a bit exhausting when you meet people and they're like, oh, do it like that? It's almost like like the guy in Shrek, that little kid in Shrek that's like, do the roar every
Yeah,
time. Do you kind of feel like
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, 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 100%. I think it's because it is a character. It's not me. Like I'm very different to my characters. And I also think like playing the same character again and again and again and again, like it can it can get exhausting for you because you're only using your creativity in one way.
yeah,
Um, Taking on Patel's Millions has been amazing because it's allowed me to put a character that I've done so long for so many years, for a decade basically, just putting that character down and going, okay, I've got a new character to learn about, a character one that I've not written, and two that is extremely different.
Right.
So like, yeah, it does get exhausting, and you do learn how to sort of, maneuver around that and sort of like mold your audience to understand that you are very different from your character. Like for a long time, a lot of people thought my first name was Planet. And then like it would get to the stage where I would go anywhere and they'd be like, Kokila is here. But I'm like, I'm not Kokila. That's a character that I played. And that did sort of bug me in the beginning. But I was really new and I wasn't aware that with the amount of content that I was releasing as this auntie and the amount of work that I was doing in that style, people weren't going to understand who I was.
Mhm.
And then once I started expressing myself as myself, people began to see that actually Parle is very different to his characters and the roles that he plays, even though that Kokila Ben is a huge part of who I am and what I do in my day to day. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I really admire that, and I think that's something really cool because I think I remember your name was such a huge guessing thing that no one even like even now I call you Pale, like I know your first name, but yet I never call you that. It's so bizarre, like
Yeah.
how literally just everyone calls you Pale now because of that. I mean, it's very interesting how you've managed to create that for yourself. But I think one
I always wanted to create um
stage name.
yeah, and I always wanted to create characters that people can remember. Like how you just today came on and you just said Kokila, like you it's me, but you always know it's that auntie in the grey and pink cardigan with the chotlo that starts off with the oh my God. Everyone just smiles as soon as you say that because they know, oh, Bachav, yeah, right? Wo wapas aa gayi. Like she's back.
Hmm.
It's that sort of mentality in your head, like, oh, here she's back. What's she gonna talk about this time? And that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah,
And and I think જ્યારે આપણે હ્યુમર કરીએ ને I think એક balance હોવું જોઈએ. I think લાઈફમાં જે પણ આપણે કાંઈ કરીએ there has to be that balance.
correct.
And I think when I've seen a lot of times when we've seen comedy and humor done in society, it's usually at the expense of mocking our own selves for
Hmm.
Western validation to get more kind of to look more relevant, I guess, with the times. But I think the one thing that I've liked about you, Pale, is that you've always been very sensible, I think, with your humor and very respectful to our culture, where you're not like I remember there was this one video you did which was about the typical behaviors of people we see at the mandir, and I think that was a very tricky video to make because
Very.
you had to make sure that you're not hurting the Hindu sentiments, but yet also just highlight the sort of behaviors, the sociological aspects of us as
Yeah,
human beings.
absolutely,
And I think it was
absolutely.
a very well done video. Um,
Thank you. I did think a lot about it before I released it.
so I was going to say, why even now I see that happening a lot where people make humor and make jokes at the expense of, mocking their own culture, their own beliefs. But two-part question, really. Why do you think they do that? And secondly, how conscious and careful have you had to become and be in your career thus far as well?
So I'll start with the second question. I've had to be conscious and careful, but that comes to me naturally because I've never wanted my humor to be something that offends people. When it comes to religious sentiment, whether you are a Hindu, you're a Muslim, you're a Sikh, you're a Christian, you are Parsi, you're a Jew, you're an atheist, that is your belief, right?
Yeah,
So if you make one rule for religious group A, that group for religious group B has to be the same. Because
right,
just the love that religious group A has for their beliefs, religious group B has as well. The only difference is it's a different religious group.
right.
So if we are now being sensitive about one religious group, then we should be sensitive to all religious groups. You can't have different rules for different groups because each group has its own sentiments, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's how I've understood it. And I think that's the fair way to understand it, the just way, where everyone has a religion or they don't, but it's a belief, right? So everyone has a belief and everyone's belief must be sort of respected. at the same time, my comedy has always been more about the human flaws, right? So it's it puts philosophical sentiments on the back burner, sort of like this isn't important right now. Yes, they are in the mandir, but the behavior is not about what they are praying to. It is about them, the
Mhm.
person's behavior, right? It's about the aunties competing in bhajans, right? One wants to be the louder than the other.
It's
Now, the
true.
irony is that in any religious building, you're meant to humble yourself, right? Whether you're in a temple or a church, it's about becoming humble and grounding yourself, and understand that you're in a room where there's a higher energy or something that is bigger and higher than you. Yet these aunties are still competing against one another, right? So
Yes.
I try and always look at the human element of the things that I do.
Content.
And
Yeah.
in terms of writing this type of content, it sort of ties into what I said earlier. Like everyone has you know feelings about these things. So like there's no need to sort of point fingers at those things if you want to make people laugh. I think people do that because it's quicker, it's easier. It's like adult humor. It's so quick to write. You can just write it fatafat and get a joke and a laugh. But then it's not clever. There's no intellect in that. Like you will see a lot of shows um and films where they just throw that in because it's a quicker, faster thing to do. It's like
Mhm.
fast food in the world of comedy, but it's not clever because it's what is already obvious and what is already apparent. They've not had to dig, they've not had to think, they've not had to really be smart in the way they write the joke.
Mhm.
So I think that's why when it comes to adult humor and religious humor, it's the easier thing to do. And I think comedians are under so much pressure to make people laugh. They're like, I will have to make them laugh at any cost.
Mhm.
So that's what they choose. They're like, okay, I'll sacrifice this sentiment as long as it gets a laugh.
Hmm. No, I agree with you, and I think it's about I think addressing double standards. I think that's what you did, especially with that video. It was just addressing the hypocrisy. I think that's all it
Yeah.
was, and I think and I see exactly where you're coming from, and I think it's good to do that because it's important to address that in as part of our society as well. But I think when it comes to you know YouTubers especially, like I've also believed that there is a huge stigma as well attached to YouTube, and I think to anyone who's on social media, I don't know if you face this a lot, Parley, as well, but maybe perhaps because you have become such a well-known name in that field. But do you kind of feel like there have been people who haven't really taken you seriously, or perhaps think or fob you off because you're
Oh
not
yeah.
a sort of an academically uh sort of
Trained
accepted.
actor and
Yes,
yeah, yeah. Oh,
exactly.
100%, 100%. And it comes down to again how they see the audience and the wider audience. They have worked so hard and become such good actors, and they're so wonderful at what they do. And without a doubt, that doesn't come easily. It comes from a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication. But then when they see someone like me who hasn't had to do that and can build an audience and can, sell out shows and get lots of interaction on their content, lots and lots of views, they automatically think that it's not fair. How is this person doing so well with what they are doing? Yeah, I'm the one who studied this, blah blah blah, da da da. But what they don't understand is we've had to work hard in what we do as well. We write our own videos, we script them and edit them ourselves. We come up with the concepts ourselves, we market them ourselves, we subtitle them ourselves, we interact with our audiences ourselves, especially in the beginning. All of this is hard work, it's graft in itself. The difference is that our level of what we do is created for the masses, or even if it's niche content, it's still created in a way that the ordinary person can watch and relate to. Whereas a lot of like the higher intellectual level comedy is created in such a way that the Aam Aadmi or the ordinary person, they're not going to be um they're not going to be able to warm to it
Yeah,
because the ordinary person isn't super intellectual in that way. They're just an ordinary person living their life and they want, something to smile about at the end of the day. So I've definitely felt that. And for a long time, it made me feel like, maybe I need to learn more about acting and maybe I need to do more about um writing content. But then at the same time, there's been like a really big movement where people are really respecting content writers on the internet because they're like, what you guys do, you've taught yourself, and we want to now learn from you. So
yeah,
because that bridge is being built and those conversations are had, you feel a lot better. Now I'm very like proud and very sort of at one with the idea that yes, I'm an internet content creator.
mhm,
And yes, that has paved the way for me to work in theatre and things like that. And no, I'm not trained in the same way many actors have. But then there's been hundreds of amazing actors who have never gone to theatre school or drama school, and they've done so well. I still I still will eventually learn more about acting, and that's not because I have to, but that's because I want to. It's something that I want to explore. But it's not because I feel like my self-worth isn't there, if that makes sense.
yeah. No,
But yeah,
absolutely.
there's definitely that sort of thing where even in the theater world, right, we've got Patel's Millions, but then Patel's Millions is like heightened comedy. It's very like energetic, high level comedy. Wouldn't go as far as to call it slapstick because I don't think it's that. There
Mhm.
isn't much slapstick in it, but it does have that element of silliness and funness to it, paired with drama, right? There are dramatic moments in the show where the audience are just silent. And that silence is so different from the type of comedy I come from because you don't have that sort of silence. This is laughter through the whole show. Theatre itself is so vast, it's so big. It's
It's
it's so
subjective.
broad. It's so broad. There's everything from one-man shows to pantomimes to farce to Shakespearean. There's so much in the world. Like the stage is a stage, and how you use it
Right.
is as unlimited as creativity itself. Um, so yeah, but I will also say that we've had a lot of praise and support from lots of traditional theatre groups and theatre actors because they understand what it means to be an artist, right? And why you can have different genres of dance, so why can't you have different genres of theatre, right? You can have classical dance, Western, Indian, Bollywood, ballet, Garba, hip hop, Bhangra, hula hoop dancing. You can have so many different styles of dance, so why can't we do the same with theatre?
Absolutely. No, definitely. And I think that's something which I find very important as well. And I really relate to you being an independent content creator because being one myself, I know it's so hard. We've
Mm,
had to create a brand ourselves from scratch. Sure, we might have linked up with other established
100%.
corporations and institutes along the way, but to actually maintain ourselves, it's taken a long, long time, and it's very difficult to do. But Pale, how do you stay motivated and positive? Because look, both of us know this industry, and it's definitely no cakewalk at all to survive. And I'm sure you've also had some of your experiences too.
A lot of it has to come from the people that I'm around. So my friends, family, Vibs, um, the people that I directly work with very closely, people like Priti, Mira. Um, it comes down to their energy, and you have to be around fun, happy, positive, supportive people. If you're around people that are constantly going to be moaning about how terrible the industry is, or constantly be saying that, oh, look, this person got this and it should have been you that got it, or be around people that are constantly just nitpicking and just creating like a toxic environment, then you spend more time concentrating on those comments than you do with the work at hand. With saying that, you also have to have a true amount of resilience where you can disconnect yourself from your work charge yourself up in a positive way and come back to it ready and strong to tackle whatever it is that you need to do. With that being said, you have to also allow yourself to just have days where you feel sad, where you feel down, where you feel a little bit, you know, under the weather with everything. And that's okay as well. Like, if you didn't feel that working in this industry, then clearly you don't have a soul. Like, if you have a soul and a heart, you are going to feel sad. It is a hard industry to work in. But you can't let those moments become the definitive moment of when you are doing what you're doing. You have to constantly adapt to a changing industry. And most of all, like I said, the mindset, keep it very positive, learn how to maneuver. And one final note I will always say is work in a way where you are collaborating with like-minded people who value you, who respect you, and who you value and respect as well. You should work with people alongside you. No one should be above and below. I think things like that can really create a toxic atmosphere. When you work with other brands or other businesses, you should be like, yep, you're smaller than I am, but that's fine. Or, yep, you're bigger than I am, that's fine. But we're here to exchange ideas, work together, and create something fantastic at the end. So no one is bigger, no one is smaller. Everyone is equal, and everyone serves a purpose in, you know, bringing whatever creative project or whatever it is to life.
Right. No, very, very beautifully put there. And I think I want to go back a bit more in your life.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, and I used to have a passion of Hindi cinema, of our Gujarati culture, I still remember, I don't know if you had this in your school as well, but if you would meet a fellow Gujarati person and you'd call them by their actual name, the way it's pronounced, they'd immediately be like, oh, that's not how you pronounce it. It's supposed to be like this in a more Western approach. I don't
Yeah.
know if you ever had that. Um,
Yeah.
uh, when you kind of look back in your time, how did you deal with repercussions of, being proud of embracing who you are? And did that ever break you as well when you were young?
Yeah, I suppose it did. I suppose I just gravitated towards people that were more similar to I am. I didn't give too much time and importance to people that didn't want to embrace who they were because I knew that deep down it's them that are living a false reality where they are whitewashing their name, how they act, what they do, but they go home and eat dal bhat. So in my head, it's just like you're just pretending, and you think that by pretending, all of a sudden the wider community will sort of accept who you are more so. And it's just like my whole approach was that I will find people that are like me and I will make new friends and I'll connect with new people. Like I said, like the team that I work around are so, so, so incredible. And that's because even though we're all so different, we are so similar.
Yeah.
And you just have to make time for those people rather than the people that are like, oh, don't pronounce my name in the way it should be pronounced, anglicize it and things like that. And now I see all those people, like sort of coming on the internet doing things about South Asian this and Indian this, and I'm like, oh, now all of a sudden you care. Now all of a sudden you want to be really this here. Now you want to say that, yeah, you grew up watching Indian film, blah blah blah. Whereas before you were so embarrassed and repulsed by the idea of talking about these things. And it's just like, for what? But everyone's on a journey, isn't it? They were under a different pressure.
Yeah.
Now that pressure is loosening where people are like, you know what? If I want to talk about Hindi cinema, I will. You know what? I want to speak half Gujarati and half English, I will.
Yes.
Even now, I still struggle with the South Asian mainstream because most of the content being made in this country and in the West still panders to what white people want it to be. There is there is such a lack of authentic South Asian stuff. Like the amount of times I've spoken about a pilot of a TV show, and they'll be like, okay, but the Gujarati mum will need to speak in English. And I'm like, no, but this mum doesn't speak English. She speaks Gujarati. And they're like, yeah, but people don't understand that. How did people understand Squid Games? It was in Korean. Money
Exactly.
Heist was in Spanish. Why did people watch that? Alice in Borderland was in Japanese. How are all these shows, super hit shows, in languages that people do not understand in a global scale? But we ourselves as South Asians are the problem. They'll be like, no, just do the dialogue in English. Why? This character wouldn't speak in English in the house. So why is there this obsession with whitewashing them just so a few more white people can understand? If white
Yeah,
people made the language, could they not read the language with subtitles?
which actually
Oh,
technically, even in the English language, there are a few words that have actually been taken from like Sanskrit. So
exactly.
like
There's a
pajama comes from pajama. I mean,
jungle.
classic example.
Yeah, there's so we have that same problem in our sort of world as well, where they won't want to write a character in one of the Indian languages. Not even Indian, but like even East Asian people suffer from the same sort of approach where they'll want to do like a Chinese father, and then the Chinese father will be speaking English, and then so many people will feel like, but if you've written a Chinese character of this class and you're trying to say that they're a typical, Chinese father in California, then why are they not speaking in Mandarin? Why are they speaking in English? Like it to me doesn't make sense. And I get that it's so you can communicate a narrative quicker, but there's no harm in sprinkling in more of the language that they authentically spoke.
Right.
This is what I love about a lot of the new things that are coming out of India, especially. I was watching Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway the other night, and there's so much dialogue in Bengali where I'm like constantly glancing at the subtitles. But it makes it believable that she is a lady from Kolkata who has come to Norway and she hasn't actually explored much outside of Kolkata. And now she's in a country like Norway, which is so alien to her. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? Whereas if she was speaking Hindi and English, you'd be like, you're a little bit more worldly. You have a bit more of an understanding. So that authenticity, I feel it more because she's speaking in her, mother tongue rather than what is expected for the audience.
It's wonderful. Look, Polly, I think it's been so great to finally have you on filmishilmy.com. And I think we've been really proud to support Patel's Millions as well. So we're very happy about that. And great to know that the tour is doing really well. I mean, you, Sneha, and all the other actors that are there, brilliant work. And yeah, I'm really happy to see that you're sort of nailing it on the head when it comes to Gujarati culture. And
Thank you, thank you. Your support is so important. And like I said, let's work again soon in a collaborative way and see what we can come up with to create some creative masala of some sort.
definitely, મને મસાલો બહુ જ ગમે અને મને બહુ
Me
જ
too.
પીવાની
Has to
બહુ
be
જ મજા આવે અને
added.
સાંભળવાની પણ as well.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
But no, it's good. But look, thank you so much, Paula, for joining me on Filmy Show.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful to have you and wishing you all the very best.
You too, my friend. Thanks for having me.